Okay.
January 28th, 2021.
2019.
And Raina and Hector, I've been in my recordings, you guys really need to speak up, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I know we're in a smaller room, but.
Mara,
Hmm?
over here is okay?
Yes. I think there might be one behind you too.
Does that door have to be open?
We're just kind of waiting for anybody public to come in if they might need to.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Number 2. Doug, do you have anything to report out of closed session?
Just the direction was given to staff, but there was no reportable action taken.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment for items that are not on the agenda? No. Okay,
Moving on.
here we have a special presentation and a public hearing.
Okay, Doug, I'm going to minimize you a little bit. I got to do a presentation.
No problem. My life wishes should be the same.
Is he still there?
Yeah, I see him. He's right there. You just don't see his face. I'm going to move him around here too. Blaine, how do you want to do this? Do you want the clicker or the mouse?
I have Kelly's fingers, so I can just tell Kelly's fingers what to do. Oh,
Up or up, the board's going to see your presentation up here.
right, but he's good right
I
here.
have right here, so it's,
He can change slides for me.
Can you change slides up here? Thank you.
Oh, I thought you had control of it. You have control.
Ah, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You should know better than that.
No.
Right, come on, duh.
Come on, Blaine. Watch your head, Blaine. Owen, watch your head.
Okay. All right, well, first of all, good to be here. And, Director Ronnie, we haven't met, I'm Blaine Reilly, I'm the district engineer. And so what I'm going to do is just give an overall summary of where we are on the wastewater treatment plant renovation and expansion project. And with that is also included a recycled water purple pipe distribution system, so we can take advantage and use the recycled water that we're going to produce for the new plant. And this is, some of this, you guys, I'm doing this really as a refresher for everybody, so some of it you guys will be very familiar with, and maybe for some of you this will be a little bit new and new background for you. So first of all, just to give you some an understanding of how the sanitary sewer system works in San Miguel. We're basically split with the river. So the east side of the river, the terrace, is not sewer. Everybody over there is on septic systems or on-site wastewater treatment systems. Wastewater from the east side does not go currently to the wastewater treatment plant. Then the west side of the river, the main part of town, is pretty much completely sewered. Every parcel in town has access to sanitary sewer collection system. I think there's just a very few number of parcels that aren't connected that are still on septic systems. Okay. So this is kind of, this is our existing conditions. So our average daily flow to the plant is about 150,000 gallons per day. Our peak dry weather flow, max daily dry weather flow, when it's not raining, it gets up around about 190,000 gallons per day. And then when it rains, because we have some places where we have inflow of stormwater into our sanitary sewer system, our max wet weather day is can be upwards of 500,000 gallons per day, 500,000 gallons per day. And we'll see with this rain over the last couple of days, we'll see that at the plant. I'm sure Kelly's probably already seen that. Our population, current population served is about 2,600, a little over 2,600, and we have around 780 sewer connections right now. Our average daily flow, this is per connection, so per household or per business, is about 192 gallons per day. And that equates to a per capita average daily flow of around 65 gallons per day, which is really low, which is good. Let's go to the next one. So our existing plant at the north end of town, it's what's called an aerated pond or an aerated lagoon system. Basically, wastewater flows from the town into the plant. There's a pump station at the plant that pumps water into ponds 1 and 2, where we get primary treatment, and it's aerated, so that helps break down the biological matter in the ponds, and also helps remove nitrogen. Flow from the first 2 ponds, the primary ponds, goes into pond 3 and then pond 4. These are basically settling ponds and polishing ponds. And then from there, it goes into percolation beds. And so the treated effluent, we're treating to a secondary level right now. It's basically percolated into the soils within the plant boundary, and those make it into this Salinas River subflow system, and eventually find their way in the subsurface northward towards Monterey.
Did you want to pump from pond 4 to the percolation beds, correct?
No, it's gravity. Just real quickly, this is kind of what our plant consists of. We don't have what's called the headworks. That's something we're going to add with the new plant. We have, as I said, we have the 2 primary aerated treatment ponds. Those are 25 horse surface aerators. They're basically, those are from an energy perspective very inefficient, something we're going to do away with. And then we've got the secondary pond, stage 2 or 3, with smaller aeration pumps on those. The percolation ponds, the lift station, and then we have some maintenance and shop facilities out there. And you can see the date. The original plant was built in the 1980s. It went through a pretty significant upgrade in 2000, and then there's been kind of nominal things done since then. So these are the historic flows. The red line is the plant capacity, which is 200,000 gallons per day. You can see, I guess, on the right side, it goes from old on the left to current on the right. You can see that we get quite a bit of fluctuation, but it stays within kind of a constant band. And on average, we're kind of averaging about 150,000, 155,000 gallons per day. But there are days where we have flows that exceed the capacity of the plant. And those big spikes there in the middle, where we went way over the capacity of the plant, those were related to wet weather events like we're having now. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of days that we spike over our plant capacity. Here's our population growth projections. As I said, now we're at about 2,600. The projections based on census projections and the county's projections, in 2055, we could be upwards of about 3,600 to 3,700 people. Because when we updated the master plan this year, we actually looked, I think we took a much more detailed look at what kind of growth potential we have. And based on our analysis, looking at the actual parcels that could be developed within the district boundary and within the urban reserve line, it's possible, and I think probable, that we could be, by 2050, upwards of 6,500 people. So significantly more than the census tract would predict. So our wastewater, what we're projecting for future flow, we'll just talk to go quickly, average daily flow. By 2025, we think will be an average, actually I want to talk about, because this is what we'll design the plant for, is the maximum dry weather flow. So in 2025, we think will be probably a little bit over 300,000 gallons per day. By 2035, that's going to bump up to about 450,000 gallons per day. 2040, 460,000 gallons per day. And by 2050, we'll be over 500,000 gallons per day, based on our projections. Okay. These are impossible to see at this scale, but I brought two poster boards with, well, actually with one of these, the plant layout, the proposed future plant layout, which is on the left-hand side. Without getting into a lot of detail, basically, we're looking to, when we expand the plant, repurpose all of the ponds that we have. So we're going to keep those and reuse them for different purposes. We're going to add a headworks, which is important. That's where we get screening at the front of the plant, where we can remove lots of things that are getting into the plant right now. We'll remove grit, and then we'll go to a primary treatment process that we recommend, that we're designing right now, that was approved in the master plan, is what's called a membrane bioreactor system. And it's a tertiary level treatment process. It'll be able to take our raw wastewater and treat to a point that it can be recycled, reclaimed, and used for a number of different purposes. But we're primarily interested in making that source available to surrounding vineyards for them to use as an irrigation supply in lieu of pumping groundwater. So that will help do two things: find a home for our treated effluent, and also reduce groundwater pumping in our part of the Paso Robles groundwater basin, and help the groundwater basin more healthy and recover in our area. Okay. And there's a lot to that, so if you want to take some time, and I'll leave it out here, you guys can really look in detail what it is we're proposing. So that was the plant component of it. The other component of it is the reclaimed or recycled water distribution system, the purple pipe system. This would provide a distribution of the recycled water for, as I said, to local vineyards, and also to landscape areas within our community, including the school, parks, homeowners associations, and other places that can take advantage of our recycled water. Okay. Project schedule. I think let me get a little closer to the line of that. We got notice from the water board in June of 2018 that our plant had exceeded 75% of its treatment capacity, and we needed to start planning for the plant expansion. So we started then. We did a number of things that along the lines, in line with that. We completed a water and wastewater rate study. We acquired additional property on the plant to provide for that expansion. We went through the Prop 218 process. We went through painfully the water and wastewater rate increase. We updated, we completed a wastewater treatment plant engineering study. We completed the preliminary design of the wastewater treatment plant. We've submitted applications for grant funding for the project. And now we're in the process of doing the environmental CEQA NEPA work to make us in compliance with those. We're in the middle of the final design of the project, and we're anticipating being in a position to have everything done and permits secured and ready to go to construction sometime late this year, sometime between June of this year is when we're hoping. It's probably going to be a month or so later, but sometime later in late summer, I would imagine, we're hoping to be ready to go out to bid for construction.
Okay.
And then we think it'll be completed by, we're proposing to do this in phases, depending on how much money we can get. But we hope phase one will be completed by the end of this year. Okay.
Question on if we were to complete phase one, what kind of capacity increase would we be talking about?
We would bring it up to 325,000 gallons per day, which would get us out, that would be good for about 10 to 15 years, I think.
Thank you.
This is the painful part, the cost estimate. Like I said, we've broken the project into 3 phases, because we're not, we don't know for sure how much funding we can get and where we're going to get the funding. So there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I won't go into the details of what's included in each one. But it's a logical sequence, so if we got phase 1 done, we're operational, we can meet our permit requirements, but we can't do a lot of the other things that we really need to do. So phase 1, 2, and 3, and then there's a certain amount of work that we're proposing to be done by district staff, district personnel. So when we add it all up, the capital, this is the capital cost of the project, does include the soft costs. It's really about $15.5 million. Okay. This is the cost estimate that includes everything. Some of these things have already been paid for, but these include the soft costs, the engineering costs, the bond counsel, legal counsel costs that we're probably going to incur, engineering, environmental, also the costs related to, there'll be costs associated during construction with testing and things like that. For phase 1 and 2 only, not including phase 3, the total cost is about $10.7 million. We're still at a point where we want to include a contingency for planning purposes. So we're looking at a total project cost with phase 1 and 2 of about $11.8 million. And I think that's the number that I'd like you to kind of have in your mind. That's the number that we're looking to write a check for someday.
Not that it's a big difference in the overall total, but most cases for contingency will run about 7%. Is that reasonable to shoot for 10 or?
I think at this point there's still enough unknowns that I just felt like 10% is that number will tighten up over the next couple of months by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's
Okay.
going in there. Okay. And this, so now these are things that we're doing to try to pay for this. So we've already been awarded and used our WM DAC involvement grant. We used the $177,750 to do the planning and the preliminary engineering studies. We've been awarded a Clean Water State Revolving Fund planning grant, $250,000. We're using that to fund the environmental CEQA and NEPA work that's being done right now, and the design development and construction documents. So that's what that money is being spent on. We've done a pre-application to the DWR for their small community wastewater funding program at $14.5 million. That pre-application is in. We haven't had any response yet back from that. Well, actually, they're waiting for the CEQA NEPA to be done. We submitted last month the Prop 68 Round 1 GSP implementation grant for $5 million. We're supposed to hear about that one late spring, early summer. We've been in contact and submitted documents to the Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, their Rural Utilities Service Grant and Loan Program. The amount is still to be determined. They're waiting. They've got the engineering report, but they're waiting on the environmental work to be finished before they make a decision, or at least before they even really process our application. And then there's another fund. We've applied now twice for the 2020 and 2021 funding cycle for the county CDBG program. We were unsuccessful in both those funding cycles. We're planning to resubmit in the 2022 funding cycle. And, so we're pushing to find ways to pay for this so it isn't out of our pocket. And I think that is the end.
So a question about the purple pipe. So you're talking about selling or, having it accessible to vineyards, you'd sell that, right?
Yes. Yeah, we see that as a revenue source.
Right.
Hopefully sufficient to really pay for the O&M costs of the plant is what we're kind of hoping.
So is it sold, because right now, vineyards are pumping their water, so they're paying their PG&E bill.
Right.
So how does that, do you have a meter? Did you have a meter then? It'd be, they're buying gallons or?
Yes, they would buy, gallons or 1,000 cubic feet or something.
Right.
It would be metered at the point of connection to the vineyard.
Okay.
So it would basically work just like, if you have a water meter, you get a bill every month, it would be just like that.
So is it hooked directly into the vineyard, or is it go into a holding tank for them?
The way that we would see it working, and we talked to Vino Farms on the west side, they have two, and they're building a third large line irrigation reservoir, storage reservoir. Really, the way it works best is if they would pump, if they would take it from us and put it into their reservoir.
Okay.
And then that gives them two things. That way we can provide them a constant supply. We're not trying to ramp up and down with their particular irrigation cycles, right? And it also gives them the ability to blend our water with their groundwater, because our water is saltier than their groundwater is. And so we would see them using, and that's what the way we've been talking to them about, they would use a blended source of groundwater and recycled water. And probably it's going to be, we've done some blending analyses, it would probably be a 80-20, 80 groundwater, 20% recycled water. Because that quality seems to be suitable for vineyards.
Okay. And it would be cost effective for, I don't know that J-Lore has ponds on the side.
He doesn't, he's talking about building them.
Okay.
Yeah, he would. And to be honest, it really is, it's only, well, it's not, it will work best. At some point, we believe that the GSAs are going to require curtailment of pumping
Yeah.
by some amount. When that happens is when the value of our recycled water is really becomes premium, right?
Right.
And this will work even in the event that that doesn't happen, but I feel pretty comfortable in the next few years that we're going to see the GSAs put pumping restrictions on the pumpers. And when that happens, they'll be able to use recycled water in lieu of groundwater and be able to either make up that difference or what the J-Lore guys are talking about doing is taking a blended supply of Paso recycled water and Nasi water, and there's a backbone of something like 11 large vineyard owners along a proposed pipeline alignment. They would use that blended supply exclusively. They would completely shut off their wells. They would then, and this is something that we've proposed to the board GSAs, the development of a groundwater replenishment credit program. So the idea would be that if those backbone users curtail completely their groundwater pumping, it equates to about, I think it's about 4,000 acre feet a year. And say they were asked by the GSAs, or not asked, but are required to curtail by 20%, say. So if they curtailed 100%, and they were required to curtail only 20%, they've got 80%, they would earn 80% of that in the form of groundwater replenishment credits that then they could make available for sale. And we would be able to do the same thing to people that needed, that didn't want to curtail that 20%. They could purchase those replenishment credits and offset that 20%. And so that's something that put together kind of a white paper to kind of put that concept in front of the GSA Cooperative Committee, and which we did last in November, I think, and then that's something that still, well, now needs to be kind of fleshed out.
So before that comes into play, as of today though, this purple pipe, this purple water, is that, or purple pipe, however you say that, it needs to be cheaper though than what they're able to pump from the groundwater, right? To make it,
Cost effective.
yeah,
It needs to be as,
or equal to,
equal to,
right?
that's
Mhm.
correct,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and that's why the purple pipe is in phase 3 as well. We wouldn't build it until we either had long-term water purchase agreements from somebody,
Okay,
or until curtailment requirements,
got
pumping
it.
curtailment requirements are in place. Yeah, we're not gonna go out and build it until we have a home for it.
Okay, all right, that was my other question, okay.
So, did you hear what happened about 2 days ago at the BLS, Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
Okay, so you know exactly where I'm gonna go with this next, okay. So to get the board up to speed, 2 days ago, the Board of Supervisors is currently considering a new land use ag offset ordinance that may be permanent. That will affect the entire unincorporated GSA, so I assume it's not gonna affect past or old ones.
That's correct, that's correct.
So, new tiered system, new this, new that, whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipe regarding that. Okay.
So, translate.
So basically,
Thank you.
right now there's a neutrality ordinance that the county has, which is an urgency ordinance, temporary ordinance, emergency, not urgency. And basically you have to offset any new planting. So if you want to plant an acre, you have to fallow an acre.
No, they had that before.
Yes, that's what they have.
That's what's in place right now.
But it expires next year in January.
Okay.
So they're working at feverish pace to come up with a replacement to, in their words, fix the problems of this one. But it becomes their current direction to their staff is to develop a tier system. And I won't go into all of it because I don't know all of it that well, but basically it's going to make it better for some and worse for some, just like everything does. The benefit is that the worse for some is better for us, and better for producers of recycled water. And us and Paso are the only two, or we will be. But at any rate, that creates another option for people to buy into recycled water to offset their pumping in order to do what they would really like to do on their property. The new ordinance, they suggest that it's going to allow more water use per parcel than the current one does, which would allow some people to start using water that couldn't previously. But in the long run, it's still going to be some sort of an offset, and people are going to want to see some sort of way to get around that, which is where we would come in.
So offset being water offset usage is what you're concerned with.
Yeah, so like if your offset was a 1-to-1, then you could use 1 part recycled water to offset your growth, instead of fallowing, potentially. Obviously, a lot of things have to be worked out to get to that point.
Yeah.
But in the curtailment aspect, if across the basin there's a requirement to curtail 20%, then that 20% would either have to be through fallowing or through use of recycled or surface water of some sort. And those options are severely limited. So in the example that Blaine gave about somebody offsetting 100% of their usage, they could sell potentially 80% of that usage to other vineyards who have no access to recycled water or surface water.
It's like cap and trade, right?
A little bit like exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing that the replenishment credits, the other potential market for those are like housing development. right now, they have to, it's water neutral, so they have to find a way to offset. If we have, a bank of water, replenishment credits here in the district, those become valuable.
Which also brings up a very interesting point. I was reading, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like new single-family buildings to pay $5,000 fee in a water offset fee, is that correct?
That's what they have to pay currently.
Yes, and so when a new development shows up here in this town, they have to pay for it. And then where did that money, where is it, I mean, we're looking at 100 homes that got built in the last 3 years.
That money is going into an account with the county. That account, and it's the same account that Cash for Grass, that's where, that account is what pays for that. They've accumulated hundreds of thousands of dollars that they can't, we tried to find projects to fund out of that fund, and they wanted to give us the money. We couldn't find projects that fit their criteria. So they've got this program, they're collecting a lot of money, but they don't have anything right now that makes sense to do with it.
And we can't use our whole pipe system as a way to get money for that?
So and this has been about a year since we really had a meaningful discussion with them, that we kind of outlined what our plans are for the district. And part of that is eventually going to have, the GSA of the district is going to have to come up with a water conservation ordinance and their own water offset program. If that comes around, then the county, at least on the staff level, was interested in helping to fund that with water offsets that were already paid in San Miguel. Because there's not enough houses in the basin to use all the money that they want, or that they got. So potentially, and this is very potential, is that if that comes around as far as our GSA is concerned, that the county could provide seed money to fund programs in the district, and then the district itself would collect some sort of an offset fee from homes that couldn't use recycled water or couldn't provide enough reduction to cover their offset.
Okay. I don't want to keep going down the subject because we'll end up in the weeds really fast. Recycled water is considered a sewer function, or is that considered its own enterprise function?
Here it would be under wastewater.
Wastewater, okay. I wasn't sure on the technicality of that. And the other one is some of those ag properties belong to the Australia Elkhorn Creston district, which, if I'm not mistaken, is they're going to be outside of our boundaries. LAFCO may want an outside user agreement, which includes a fee, if I'm not mistaken. Has that been thought about?
We haven't started working that out yet.
Okay.
So in most cases, recycled or surface water doesn't hold the same boundary issues as groundwater.
Okay.
So whereas we cannot legally provide groundwater outside the